What is an appropriate reaction to grief? The only thing I wanted when it happened was for the responsible to pay for their actions. A raging fire burnt me from the inside day in and day out, and I wished for that same fire to stir up everyone in our small world, because I believe in the power of unity. Especially if we have to put an end to evil. May 1968. The first case of what would much later be known as the Dice murders was reported. A man has been found in his own house burnt to death with acid. Signs of struggles were evident even though there were no indication of forced entry in the premises. Carefully placed next to the body was a white dice on which the face with 2 dots was painted in black. February 1971. The second case was reported in another town. A woman was found in her office as she was working late, electrocuted to death, but the source could not be identified. Next to the body, there was a white dice on which the face with 3 dots was painted in black. September 1977. The third case, similar to the first one, with an unidentified victim burnt with acid and a white dice with the 2 dots face painted in black. November 1985. The fourth case with a young victim found with not a single drop of blood remaining in the body. A white dice with the 5 dots face painted in black was found next to the body. March 1986. The fifth case with an old man found dead in his bed, with his skin turned green and covered with ulcers as a putrid smell emanated from the body. A white dice with the 1 dot face painted in black was found next to the victim. April 1990. My friend and fellow journalist was given the same treatment as the fourth victim from November 1985. Since I literally freeze or spiral out of control at the mere sight of a dice or any big representation of the number 5, like on a price tag or a sport jersey, for example. My employer and colleagues knew about the negative effects that loss had on me, yet, maybe in compassion and to help me cope, they let me write the article that made me the next target. October 1995 at 11:34 p.m. After loathing the entire year because of the number 5, I was anticipating the next one with a lot of hope because of the progress made in science. I had a feeling that everything would be in place for the responsible of those murders to finally be brought to justice. Before going home, I was just finishing reviewing a few articles written by the new recruits when suddenly, "Good evening, Regina." A male, smooth and soothing voice resounded from my right. I jumped in surprise, and left my chair immediately when I saw that my couch was then occupied by 3 people while a few others stood all around. There were 6 in total. All dressed in black with coats that had numbers written in white on the left side of the chest, going from 1 to 6. They all looked pale and otherworldly, giving the feeling that they were from another era but just found themselves at the wrong place and the wrong time. However, I was the one in a very dire situation. Who are you? How did you? I attempted speaking, outnumbered and overwhelmed by fear. You can call me one. The owner of the soothing voice spoke again. Of course, he wore the coat with the number 1 on the chest. He was tall, lanky and looked sick and frail. And as you can probably see for yourself, this is 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. We prefer to be referred as the Dice family, instead of the dice killer like you always do in your articles. One said, introducing them all. WH. What? That was the only thing I could muster. Dominated by their fearful presence. Regina, I'm afraid that we have matters to settle after the horrendous article you wrote about us. We usually do not go for the personal angle, but immediate action is required in this case to restore the family's honor. One spoke, pulling a dice from his pocket. All that rage and hate in each and every word in your article. Because of what? Your friend. Two spoke, with her female and calm voice that was reminiscent of a loving mother, tender voice and tone. Please understand her too. I would be equally angry if I were her. Who wouldn't want to keep such meal for oneself? Your friend tasted utterly delicious, exquisite. Five spoke, her mocking and taunting smile revealing sharp white teeth. Enough of the pleasantries. Please one, roll the dice. I have a feeling that tonight is my turn. Finally my greatness will be revealed once again, said Six, who apparently was the youngest, and with his eyes beaming with excitement as soon as one threw the dice in the air. I screamed and ran to the door. Three rapidly stood in the way with an unbelievable speed. I froze, then looked at one catching the dice, before opening his hand and announcing the number like the lucky winner of some very sick game. Number 3. One calmly said, What? No, this can't be. 6 protested. This dice has to be faulty. I demand justice. Let me roll the dice, he added. Please have some decorum and tact. 6. 3 retorted, speaking for the first time. For here is in the same situation in case your memory is faulty, he added. Nonsense. This one is the 544th. Why am I shunned so often? 6 asked. Maybe because you don't leave much behind. 5 replied. Enough. Please make it fast. We've been here for far too long. 1 said. I have to tell you the shocking truth, Regina. It will hurt. 3 revealed, extending his strong and muscular arms in my direction. The moment he touched me, I was paralyzed and then became stiff. I then started convulsing as a deadly amount of volts made its way through my entire body until I lost consciousness. I woke up several days later in a hospital bed. There is no indication on how I survived. According to the medical staff, I have just been revived in time after being found unconscious. When I mentioned the 6 killers, nobody believed that they were present in the building. The reasons are that it is very difficult for a group of 6 people to move so discreetly, and also, I was accused of being so obsessed with the dice murders to the point of staging an encounter with the responsible. A white dice with the 3 dots face painted in black was found next to me, and I know that I did not manufacture it myself. The authorities let me keep it since they believed that it is fake. I lost any credibility as a journalist along with the career I had worked for. Maybe this is what 3 meant when he said that it will hurt. Every day, every single day since that time, I think about my end, while the murders, even though covered up, continue to occur. I've lived in Oakwood my entire life. It's a small town, surrounded by woods that seem to stretch on forever. Growing up, I always thought it was the perfect place to live. Plenty of space to explore, plenty of trees to climb. But as I got older, I started to notice something strange. The trees seemed to be watching me eat tea first. I thought it was just my imagination. I'd be walking through the woods, and I'd catch a glimpse of a branch moving out of the corner of my eye. I'd turn to look, but there'd be nothing there. Just the wind, I'd tell myself. But then I started to notice other things. The trees seemed to be shifting, ever so slightly, as if they were trying to get a better look at me. And the leaves. The leaves seemed to be rustling. Even when there was no wind, I tried to brush it off, to tell myself I was just being paranoid. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. One night, I woke up to the sound of scratching outside my window. I got out of bed and approached the glass, and that's when I saw it. A branch, tangled in the window frame, its leaves quivering in the moonlight. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. And then, I saw it. The branch moved, ever so slightly, as if it was trying to get my attention. I stumbled backward, tripping over my own feet. I landed hard on the floor, the wind knocked out of me. And as I looked up at the window, I saw the branch move again. This time, it was more deliberate. The branch reached out, its leaves brushing against the glass. And then, it started to scratch again, the sound sending shivers down my spine. I scrambled to my feet, backing away from the window as if it was a snake about to strike. And then, I ran. I grabbed my keys and my phone, and I got out of there as fast as I could. I didn't stop driving until I was miles away from Oakwood. I finally pulled over, my heart still racing, and tried to process what had just happened. The trees, I realized, were alive. And they were watching me. According to the local legend, the trees in Oakwood were given the gift of thought by a mysterious entity. At first, it was a blessing. The trees helped the townspeople, providing them with food and shelter. But as time passed, the trees began to change. They became more sinister. They started to move on their own, their branches tangling together like skeletal fingers. And they started to watch us. I spent the rest of the night in a motel room, too afraid to go back to Oakwood. But as the sun started to rise, I knew I had to face my fears. I had to go back to Oakwood, and I had to confront the trees. So I drove back into town. I noticed something strange. The trees seemed to be waiting for me. Their branches were still, their leaves quivering in the morning breeze. I pulled up to my house, my heart pounding in my chest. And then, I got out of the car, and I approached the front door. The trees seemed to be watching me, their branches tangling together like skeletal fingers. And as I reached out to unlock the door, I felt a presence behind me. I spun around, but there was no one there. Just the trees, watching me with an unblinking gaze. I took a deep breath, and I stepped inside. The door creaked shut behind me, and I was plunged into darkness. And then, I heard it. The scratching, the rustling of leaves. The trees were inside, and they were coming for me. I'm writing this now, barricaded in my bedroom. The trees are outside, their branches scratching against the walls. I don't know how much longer I can hold out. But I know one thing, I'll never look at trees the same way again. They're not just plants, not just objects. They're alive, and they're watching us. The trees have been given the gift of thought. Denise had known for weeks that I had cheated on her. I think she'd already known when we were decorating the tree a few weeks before Christmas. We were both silent as we filled it with the usual stuff, and some ornaments she bought in a thrift store. Ugly as hell, but I didn't say it. Like everything remained unspoken in our relationship. When I came home 2 weeks later, her stuff was gone from our apartment. A sole text was the only confirmation I needed. I know about everything, asshole. Hope you have the shittiest Christmas ever. And yeah, it was. I was broken. And it was also the only time in my life I spent Christmas alone. My parents were vacationing, my friends had other plans. On Christmas night, the remnants of my pizza in front of me, I was about to turn on my PlayStation. Then the doorbell rang. I had the faint hope it was Denise. That she would fall into my arms, forgive me for everything. Again, that knot of disbelief in my stomach. One mistake, one DM I'd forgotten to delete, and she was gone. I wanted to kick myself. All my hope faded when I opened the door and saw an unfamiliar man. He was wearing a gray suit, Ditto hat, and had a sad expression on his face. Jehovah's Witness, I thought immediately, but I stayed polite and looked at him questioningly. It was Christmas, after all. You have something that belongs to me, the man said gravely. I want it back. I said. What do you mean? Can I help you with something? I want it back, he repeated sharply. I changed my first observation about the Jehovah's Witness to confused man. All right then, I said, already closing the door. Merry Christmas. He didn't answer back. Returning to the living room, I could still see his unmoving silhouette behind the door. Note to self, I thought. Never open the door after 9. I peered out of the window of my living room, where I had a clear view on the front door. The man was already gone. 5 minutes later, I was immersed in the game I gifted myself for Christmas. But I started to feel uncomfortable as the evening advanced. In short, it felt like someone was watching me. Several times I thought I spotted movement by the window, but when I looked there was no one there. The feeling became so strong that I couldn't focus. I turned off my PlayStation and got up to pee, glimpsing out of the window. Although the street was empty, I could have sworn someone had just been standing there. An uneasy feeling in my stomach, I closed the curtains. I felt a bit of a baby as I turned on all the lights in the apartment. But it eased my mind a little, until I was in the toilet and heard a loud knock on my living room door. Just as I thought I had imagined it, there was another couple of knocks, more determined now. Carefully, I crept to the door. One of the neighbors? This building had 5 other apartments, but I knew everyone left. It was Christmas, after all. Through the peephole I spotted no one. The hallway was covered in darkness. My neck hairs prickled. The automatic light should have turned on if someone entered. It stayed quiet for a long time. Just as I wanted to return to my couch, there were 3 more loud knocks. Someone wanted to get in. And I realized something else. The door wasn't even closed. Who's there? I asked with a shrill voice. Then no reply came, but the knocking persisted, not just from the hallway now. There was also pounding from the other side of the apartment, on the door that led to the garden. What the fuck? I whispered in fear. Some kids fucking around, it had to be. When the tapping on the windows started, I gathered all my courage and yanked open the living room door. The light flicked on and I peered out. No one. It was suddenly quiet in the other corners of the apartment too. With a trembling sigh, I locked up. It took an hour before I had convinced myself I'd imagined the entire thing. That I had been alone in this apartment for too long and should take a stroll. But I almost fell off my couch when my phone rang. Heart drumming in my throat, I stared at the screen and sighed. My mom, it was a pity call. She wanted to check in, since I was spending Christmas alone. I feigned indifference, said I could entertain myself perfectly. After 10 minutes of small talk, I threw my phone to the other side of the couch. To my frustration, tears welled up in my eyes. God damn it, my phone rang again. What is it, Mom? I asked, slightly irritated. There was only dead silence on the other end. I looked at the screen. Unknown number. When I wanted to hang up, a cold voice spoke. You have something that belongs to me. Who the fuck are you? I yelled in the phone. And how did you get my number? But the line had already died. I checked my missed calls, but the last one had been with my mother. Impossible. Mentally drained, I decided to go for bed early. Despite everything, I sunk into an uneasy sleep quickly. That lasted until midnight, when I awoke and realized I hadn't closed the curtains. My back was turned to the window, moonlight casting strange shadows on the wall. Although I wasn't wearing my glasses, I thought I recognized a figure with hat in one of the shapes. I had barely time to register it. When there was a tap on the window, my breath caught and I tried to turn around, but my muscles wouldn't comply. I tried to calm myself. Sleep paralysis, that's what this was. Your mind is awake, your body isn't. You're hallucinating. This is a dream, I told myself. But it was difficult to stay calm when I heard the unmistakable sound of my window sliding open. I tried to move again, without success. There was a shuffling sound, someone moving. In my mind, I pictured a man climbing through the window. He would enter my field of vision soon. Now I heard it, light footsteps on the carpet. From the corner of my eye, I spotted a dark shape passing my bed, but the intruder didn't halt. He went right past me, into the living room. For minutes I tried to sit up, to scream. Until I finally awoke from that vivid dream, lurching upright and staring at the window. Tea was closed, just as my bedroom door. That calmed me down a little. Although my heart was still racing, I knew it had been a nightmare, but I didn't trust it. Tiptoeing, I opened the bedroom door, as softly as I could. The living room was empty. I checked every corner, behind every piece of furniture, a broom as improvised weapon in my hands. But it was simply impossible someone hid out here. I uttered a sigh of relief and wanted to return to bed. The footsteps came from the small aisle between my bedroom and the living room. The only place I hadn't checked. You have something that belongs to me, a voice said. I screamed, and this time my body cooperated. In a few steps I reached the door of my apartment, unlocked it and ran through the hallway, out of the front door. There I was outside, shivering from the cold on bare feet and in pajamas. Luckily, the police station was just around the corner, because my phone was still outside. The officer in charge listened to my story incredulously and called a colleague. We went back to my house together, where the front door was still ajar. They barged in, but no one waited there. Nothing indicated that there had ever been someone else than me in the apartment that night. Except for one thing. The Christmas tree was lying on its side, a curious detail. Since the rest of the house looked so normal, the officers had decided pretty quickly they were dealing with an odd young man and left after a short while. Offering some standard advice, I barely registered. Sunken in thought, I picked up the Christmas tree. Nothing had felt out, surprisingly. Except for one of Denise's ornaments from the thrift store, a kind of medallion with a small photo. I had noticed it before, but never given it a closer look, figured it depicted some kind of Christmas scene. But now I saw it was a yellowish photo of a woman and child. With their somber faces and vintage clothing, they seemed to be straight from a gothic ghost story. I felt goosebumps. My phone vibrated on the coffee table. When I saw it was a text from Denise, I opened it eagerly. Had a Merry Christmas? My ex wrote, accompanied by a Christmas tree emoji. I called her, but she didn't answer. It was the last thing I ever heard from her. It didn't matter how often I asked her what she meant by it, or how many voicemails I left. Although I felt like a complete idiot, I didn't want to take any risks. So I finally took that stroll to a nearby park. I threw the medallion in the pond as far as I could. Gazing around, I half expected to be regarded by a man with a hat, or by Denise, wearing a mean grin on her face, but I only spotted a woman walking her dog. She gave me a strange look, and obviously thought I had a screw loose. Back at home, I dumped the entire Christmas tree in the trash. Just to be sure, did I really believe that Denise cursed me? Had taken revenge by sending someone? Or had I simply been hallucinating for the lack of sleep and all those days alone in that small apartment? The latter seems more probable. But then what about her text, and the complete radio silence after? Although I never saw the mysterious man again, I didn't stay in that house much longer. It felt tainted there, whether it was because of my broken relationship or something else. And one thing I know for sure now, I'm never spending Christmas alone again.